With rates rising, and of course, everyone wants to know about the election. If Biden wins, what are some good sectors to invest in? And then if Trump wins, what's your take?
Yeah, I'm gonna deconstruct that or decouple those questions. I think the rate question, while correlated with the Democratic Party, I think is slightly different. Um, so if Biden wins, I think he's been very, very transparent, which unfortunately we're not really used to getting that from politicians the last 4 years or so. But I think he's been pretty transparent in his intentions as to move away from fossil fuels into renewables. I think he's also been very transparent in terms of saying that he wants to invest into infrastructure. It's been one thing, and I'll get into this later. It's been one thing that to have this liquidity fueling this market. It's another thing to see real economic economic output. And you're seeing that breakdown right now in some of the consumer spending numbers and some of the industrial production numbers, right? Like you've heard the term a K-shaped recovery. You're seeing some people that are bouncing back, affluent people that have access to the market. Yeah, but that really only affects a small modicum of people in the United States versus the real economy. So sorry, to answer your question succinctly, Blue Sweep, I think you want to look at companies like alternative energy companies. TAN is a way to kind of play the ETF, or solar is a name that I pitched earlier. I look at companies like Roku and Cat, and that those are like, and you just mentioned, right? Like if you're going to go to a sector, the industrial sector, pick the winners, pick the leaders in those categories. And I think those companies speak to infrastructure building that will be going on. The Cats, the Rokus, the engineering companies of the world. In a Trump situation, I think energy does less poorly. That's been a beaten down sector. It's your traditional fossil fuel energy. So any type of sectors that are correlated to deregulation. So the banks, right? Right now, buybacks are restricted, dividends are being scrutinized. I think you'll see some easing up there. I think you'll see some easing or more accommodative type of policy towards energy. And I think that you might want to watch out for companies like Apple, because if we don't get this international relations and international policy right, I think the blowback of that is seemingly underestimated in a lot of these companies. And then on the flip side, Nike, if you just want to get into like the tax breakdown, if you assume corporate taxes are going to go up, you want to look for companies that have more of an international type of revenue distribution. So a company like McDonald's or Nike are very global in scope in terms of where their revenue streams are coming from.
So Bonawyn, in the event that Biden wins, and we're talking about international, especially with our foreign exchange and foreign policies, specifically a country like China, if Biden wins, is a good time to be looking at stocks and companies that are coming from China, specifically like maybe in the semiconductor field?
Yeah, I mean, that whole region actually, I think Vietnam is kind of an overlooked area as well. I mean, just to keep it simple, and I think a lot of times like we overcomplicate things, right? Pick up something that you see has been manufactured. I would say 10 years ago, everything was made in China. Half the stuff I pick up, I see made in Vietnam. I think VNM is the Vietnam ETF. You can kind of track the performance of that. I think it's rebounded nicely. What I think is that in the case of a blue sweep or just Biden, I think I mentioned blue sweep because it's harder to push through policy. You saw it with the Obama administration. Like you can have the best of intentions, but when you have these bipartisan wars, it's just hard to actually move things across the finish line. So in the event of a Biden win or a blue sweep, I do think you'll see a more diplomatic approach with China. I want to call things fairly both sides. I do think that the Trump administration has made some proper steps in terms of cracking down on the way China does business, right? Like they have a very protectionist economy while we're expected to be very expansionist and global. I think also in terms of some of the scandals that you've seen in terms of like gap accounting standards, they have not met those standards. So my point is I'm all about like a transparent market that allows you to really see what's going on. I think there can be a level of protectionism that's decreased. And I think Biden would probably be better at getting to that in a diplomatic way. You're not going to go in anyone's home and dictate the terms on which they're going to behave. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, no, for sure. Let me jump in. Speaking about the energy sector, because this is a sector that we really haven't focused too much energy on.
No pun intended.
And I know that this is your specialty, one of your specialties. So you had mentioned the stock before, Buy First Solar stock.
For solar.
Can you talk about that? Buy First Solar.
So I mentioned TAN, which is an ETF way to play it if you don't want the stock specific risk. I think a lot of the gems you guys have been dropping on people are great, right? So like if you're not as comfortable with the space and you want to play an index or an ETF, it's a great way to get exposure to an overall theme rather than taking the idiosyncratic risk of that particular company. So with that in mind, in terms of why I want exposure to the sector, I mean, you're kind of already seeing the trend away from fossil fuels. I mean, the IEA came out and I believe 25%, in 2018, I believe 25% of our electric output was from renewables. They're expecting that to increase by 50% by 2024. And that's like ridiculous growth, right? And if you look at the performance of Tesla, NEO, or any of these other companies, like you're kind of seeing the hysteria around the space. Hell, you have GM coming out with what is it, like an electric Hummer?
Hummer, yeah.
Yeah, I saw that.
Tanks next. I mean, my point is like you're seeing, massive investment into that space. So that explains why I like the sector. First Solar in particular, I like the company just because I like the way that they go about funding business. Now this company has been around, right? But if you look at their balance sheet, you look at a lot of other balance sheets of comps in that space. They use debt as a method to fuel operations, right? They have more positive free cash flow, but they have this debt balance, so much higher enterprise value vis-a-vis their market cap. But if you take a look at First Solar, they have like $500 million in debt versus about $1.5 to $2 billion of cash, right? So they could literally pay down that debt with cash if they so choose. They are burning cash, but as you've seen, a lot of other companies going through COVID, there are things you can do, whether it be layoffs or pressing vendors to kind of achieve operating leverage there. So for me, they're more in control of their own destiny, being that one, it's not really in this rate environment, but they can actually earn interest on their cash balance as opposed to accruing more interest like via debt. And I just think they're well positioned. So the pain points, and I mentioned this on CNBC, revenue growth and gross margins, I would like to see those things higher. But I think with that company specifically, being that they are like, they're positioned to be like a utility or output energy on a grand scale, the moves that the Democrats are saying they want to do directly speak to the pain points. I think they're just perfectly kind of situated for uplift if you were to get that situation.
My graduates from my school being Forbes, bag drop.
Bag drop.
A mic drop, bag drop.
Bag drop.